Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Reborn, a Japanese action flick from 2016 that stars Tak Sakaguchi. Most well known for his leading role in Versus back in 2000. Nowadays, he just calls himself Tak. And can you really blame him? I mean, he's transcended acting to become like something else. I don't know what he is, but he's better than all of us. Let's just be honest, right? Now, in Reborn, a former Special Forces operative named Toshiro, played by Tak, now lives a quiet life in the Japanese countryside as he cares for a little girl. Despite his seemingly peaceful existence, he struggles to contain the destructive impulses that once made him the top soldier of an elite unit of killers. And when his former commanding officer, the enigmatic Phantom, comes out of the shadows seeking revenge, our protagonist goes on a kill-crazy rampage against a squad of ruthless assassins. Now, as you can probably tell from that plot synopsis, the story in Reborn is very thin. Not a whole lot going on here in that regard, to be honest. However, I will say that there are some decent character interaction moments here that give us a flavor of our protagonist's personality and worldview. So, for example, early in the film, Toshiro's little convenience shop gets robbed by a guy with a knife. He holds him at knife point. And, our protagonist simply hands over the money because he doesn't want any trouble. This exhibits kind of a passive temperament that he's trying to maintain and his desire to leave his past behind him. Now, this guy also has a buddy who lives nearby who suffered some permanent injuries while protecting him back in the day. So he's got that guilt hanging over him as well. And then finally, he's caring for the little girl. But at some points in the film, he seems to disregard her safety, which makes you question his tactics a little bit. So Toshiro is not a deep character or complex character by any means, but there are some inferences and little tidbits there to mine out of Reborn that help to give you a feel for our protagonist as a person. But what about the action, right? That's what most viewers care about when going into a film such as this. Now, according to Tak, as well as the director Yuji Shimomura, this film utilizes an unorthodox form of close quarters combat that they call zero-range combat. Now, this fighting style has the following impact on the action design. First of all, there are some gunplay moments, okay? There's some gunplay that's mixed into the action scenes, but the weapons of choice in this film are primarily knives and other melee weapons. I like this because sometimes when films rely too much on shootouts and gunfights, they tend to get a bit too repetitive and one-dimensional in their action design. I think Reborn mostly avoids that flaw. Second, there is a de-emphasis on kicking and leg attacks for the most part, with a greater emphasis on hand-to-hand and upper body strikes. So this increases the speed of the attacks and makes them rather deadly. In fact, Reborn probably has the record for the highest number of slit throats in a single film. It's got to be up there, so that's good. Third, there's a lot of diversity and creativity in terms of the action choreography. You can definitely tell that these guys put some effort into mapping out precise maneuvers and making them fun to watch, so that's good. And fourth, the action physics are very realistic. Every move that is showcased is doable in real life. You don't have people flying in the air or tiptoeing on treetops or anything. So that helps to kind of ground things a little bit and make it more impactful. So overall, I really enjoyed this zero-range combat style of fighting, and it had a lot of positive influences on the action in this film. Now, this director has worked with Tak Sakaguchi on a variety of occasions as either an action director or a primary director in the past, so they have a nice working relationship. But what about the camera work, editing, and direction quality of this? Okay, the action choreography and design is really good, but sometimes in movies, you could have that quick cutting crap, that can really hurt things. Well, I'm happy to say here that these features, the direction, the editing, camera work, they do accentuate the action to make it more exciting, and at the same time, you can clearly see everything that's happening. So I think it's very cleanly shot and framed properly, in my opinion. Tak is not on the same level as someone like an Iko Uwais from the Raid films, but this guy can certainly handle himself in a fight. And I would go so far as to say that he is legitimately impressive in both his agility and the speed of his punches. If you've seen the internet trailers for Reborn, you'll have a good idea of what to expect in terms of the action. Now, in terms of the quantity of the action, there are some fights that are peppered throughout the first half. It's slightly more deliberately paced, and most of the carnage is saved for the second half, which is basically one big action scene. So there's definitely enough fighting here to satisfy most action junkies. But is there anything that I would criticize about Reborn? There are a few things that I'd like to point out, a few of which are nitpicks, but I'm going to point them out. Now, most of the bad guys in this film die rather quickly, which does emphasize the deadly nature of the fighting style that is on display. Thankfully, though, the final villain is tough to take down. You know what I mean? But I do think that the presence of some tougher henchmen and longer-lasting one-on-one fights would have added a bit more excitement, throughout the runtime. Throw in a few extra tough guys. They're kind of tougher to kill before the end. Would have helped things a little bit. Also, the backloading of the longer action scenes to the second half of the film could be a little bit frustrating for some viewers. I enjoyed the first half of this film perfectly fine. I thought it was paced well. But it wasn't until the second half where I kind of understood why this film has been getting some hype on the internet. You know what I mean? During the first half, I was like, oh, this is good stuff. And I'm like, why am I hearing like hype for this movie, though? You know what I mean? And then the second half hits, and there were certain moments, and I'm like, okay, I can kind of understand the hype now. But I will say, and this is a real nitpick, that I was a bit frustrated when I realized that much of the second half takes place in a forest. We still do not get that many good quality Japanese action films that take place in contemporary urban environments. There's tons of like samurai era action films that they do that are awesome. But I want more action that's set in city environments in Japan. I can only imagine that Reborn had a fairly small budget, even by Japanese standards. But a bit of, I should say, its change in setting did still kind of disappoint me a bit. In all fairness, though, the forest was nicely captured and atmospheric, so again, this complaint is kind of a nitpick. And finally, it could barely be considered a complaint at all, but I previously mentioned that this film has a realistic physics design, right? All the moves are doable in real life, but there is one very unrealistic aspect to all of this. Our protagonist can dodge bullets very consistently. I mean, so much so that the bad guys just stop using the guns because they're better off just going at him with like hand-to-hand combat. There's actually one point where one of the bad guys, yells at another bad guy because he continues to try to shoot at Tak, and he keeps missing. So, it's certainly ridiculous, but I'm not sure if that's a legitimate criticism because I found that to be very amusing. And you could see that in the trailer as well. But, in a nutshell, I definitely recommend Reborn to fans of action films. You're not going to get a whole lot of plot in this, but really, who cares? I mean, it's a lot of fun to watch. And I definitely see myself doing a Tak Sakaguchi double feature with this and Versus in the future. If I want an infusion of Tak awesomeness, it will probably be Versus in this film. It would be, probably two of my favorites. So Reborn is currently available on Region 2 DVD with English subtitles. And as always, I will see you next time.